Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak to you of a mystery, a sacred key hidden not in the world, but in the heart of God, the key to never again being ruled by anger, never again being shaken by the words or actions of men. You ask, is it possible? Can a man walk through this world and not be moved by its offenses, its insults, its betrayals? And I answer, yes, but not by might, not by power, by something much stranger. By dying, you see, the one who is dead cannot be offended. The one who has laid his life down cannot be angered, cannot be insulted, cannot be manipulated. The cross is not just the place where Messiah died. It is the place where you must die if you are to live. The Apostle Paul said, I die daily. Why? Because only the dead man is free. A corpse does not flinch when struck. Why? Because it no longer identifies with the wound. The secret, then, is not found in mastering your emotions. It is in surrendering yourself. The ego is the root of offense. Pride is the soil of anger. Crucify them. Leave them on Golgotha. Let them die with him. And what of control? You think you must control your environment, your relationships, your image. But this is an illusion. You are not called to control others. You are called to love them. What you cannot control, give to the one who rules all things. Anger comes from the belief that things should be different than they are. But to the surrendered heart, all things work together for good, even the insult, even the betrayal. It can become a vessel of sanctification if you place it in God's hands. Do not live by reaction, live by revelation. Don't live horizontally, responding to the storm. Live vertically, fixed on the throne. Yeshua, Messiah, when they struck him, did not strike back. When they mocked him, he was silent. Why? Because he was already poured out. There was nothing left to offend, but hear this, to walk this path, you must release your right to be angry. You must release your right to be right. Yes, even the right to be understood. When you do this, something miraculous happens. You are no longer a prisoner of people's actions. You are no longer a slave to their words. You are free. And finally, let me tell you this. What bothers you in others is often a mirror. That which stirs your anger may be a reflection of what has not yet been healed in you. So don't curse it, bless it, let it become your teacher, let it drive you to the altar. So how do you never get angry or bothered again? You live not by the flesh, but by the Spirit. You die daily. You see with the eyes of eternity. And you walk in the footsteps of the one who was pierced, but never provoked. The secret to never being angry or bothered by anyone begins not with controlling others, but with dying to yourself. This is the great paradox of the kingdom. The path to peace begins with death. Not a physical death, but a spiritual surrender so complete, so total, that it is as if your old self no longer breathes. This is the power of the cross. This is what Paul meant when he said, I have been crucified with Messiah, and I no longer live, but Messiah lives in me. It is no poetic metaphor. It is a spiritual reality. If you truly want to live beyond the reach of offense, you must first die beyond the reach of ego. Anger is the child of the self. It is born from wounded pride, unmet expectations, and the desperate desire to be seen, heard, and validated. But the self that has died no longer demands these things. It no longer rises up in protest when it is insulted. It no longer cries out when it is overlooked. A man who is dead cannot be provoked. A woman who has laid herself down at the altar of God cannot be baited into rage. Offense has no hold on the crucified life. When Yeshua walked the earth, he walked as the embodiment of peace, not because no one attacked him. He was slandered, accused, betrayed, spit upon, and nailed to a cross. But he was never once ruled by anger. Why? Because he had already emptied himself. He had laid aside his glory, his rights, his reputation. He came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. That is the pattern, that is the way, and he calls you to walk it. You may say, but I have a right to feel this way. They wronged me, they disrespected me, they betrayed me. Yes, perhaps they did, but as long as you hold on to your rights, you remain bound. The key is not in demanding justice for yourself. It is in surrendering your right to justice into the hands of the just judge. Messiah entrusted himself to the one who judges justly, and in that trust he found peace. To die daily is to wake up each morning and say, "Not my will, but yours be done." It is to lay down your right to be understood, your need to be validated, your pride, your expectations, your wounds, your name, yourself. It is to offer all of it as a living sacrifice, and a sacrifice, once placed on the altar, has no say in what happens to it. It does not protest, it does not demand, it simply yields. When you are dead to yourself, you are alive to God. You begin to see with his eyes. The insults that once stung now roll off your back like rain on stone. The rejections that once crushed you no longer pierce your heart, because your heart is hidden in him. You no longer need to fight for your place or prove your worth. Your identity is not in what they say or think, but in who he is and who you are in him. Dying daily is not a one-time event. It is a continual posture of surrender. Each day brings new opportunities to let go. Each offense is a test, an invitation to go lower, to go deeper into the death that leads to resurrection life. And in that life there is peace, there is freedom. There is a power not of this world, the power to remain unmoved while the world rages around you. The enemy wants you entangled in your emotions, triggered by every word, chained to every insult, but God wants you free. And freedom begins when the self is laid down. Do not fear the death of self. It is the beginning of real life. The more you die, the more you live, the more you release, the more you rise. So embrace the cross, not only as your salvation, but as your pattern. Let it be the place where anger dies, where ego is buried, where offense is silenced, and in its place let peace reign. Not the peace of the world, but the peace of Messiah, deep, unshakable, eternal. That is how you live beyond anger. That is how you are never bothered again. You die, and in dying you are free. The second key to never being angry or bothered by anyone is understanding and surrendering the illusion of control. At the root of most anger lies this illusion, the belief that we are, or should be, in control of how others behave, what they say, how they treat us, and how life unfolds around us. But this belief is not only false, it is dangerous. It sets you up for a lifetime of frustration, offense, and inner turmoil. To be free from anger, you must be free from the need to control. The truth is, you were never meant to control others. You were never called to make people behave a certain way, speak a certain way, or think the way you want them to think. That is not your assignment. Your assignment is to love. Your assignment is to respond in the spirit, not react in the flesh. And to do that, you must release your grip on the illusion that other people's actions are somehow under your jurisdiction. They're not. When someone insults you, lies about you, ignores you, or disrespects you, what rises up in you is not just hurt. It is the anger of a kingdom being threatened. That kingdom is your own, your expectations, your need for respect, your unspoken belief that others must treat you a certain way. But here's the truth. You are not the king of that kingdom. God is. And until you dismantle that false throne, you will continue to be ruled by every offense and irritation. Freedom comes when you stop trying to manage the world and start yielding to the one who truly rules it. Messiah never attempted to control people. He spoke truth. He loved deeply. He corrected firmly, but he never manipulated. He never forced. He never demanded his way. Even when he was rejected, he let them walk away. Even when he was betrayed, he offered no resistance. He trusted the Father fully, and because of that trust, he was unshakable. You get angry because you think things should be different than they are. You believe someone should act more kindly, respond more quickly, love you more fully, or speak to you more gently, and when they don't, you react. But what if you let go of that expectation entirely? What if you surrendered the outcome, surrendered the response, surrendered the right to be treated a certain way? What if you said, "Father, not my will, but yours be done"? even in this relationship, even in this offense, even in this moment of disrespect. When you relinquish control, you gain peace. When you stop expecting the world to bow to your preferences, you become immune to its irritations. People can do what they do, and it no longer shakes you. Why? Because your peace no longer depends on their behavior. Your joy is no longer chained to their approval. You are rooted in something higher, deeper, eternal. Control is always about fear. You fear being hurt, so you try to control people. You fear being forgotten, so you try to force connection. You fear being dishonored, so you demand respect. But fear is not of God, and where there is fear, love cannot reign. Perfect love casts out fear. And perfect love does not control, it releases, it surrenders, it entrusts everything into the hands of the Father. This is not a call to passivity, it is a call to trust, a call to let God be God, not only over the universe, but over your emotions, over your relationships, over your reactions. Anger thrives in the soil of control, but peace grows in surrender. You do not have to fix every misunderstanding. You do not have to win every argument. You do not have to manage how others see you. You only need to be faithful, to walk in the Spirit, to respond with grace, to speak in love, and to trust the outcome to Him. When you give up control, you don't lose power, you gain it. Because now you are no longer moved by the chaos around you. You are governed by the Spirit within you. You become like Messiah, who slept in the storm while his disciples panicked. Why? Because he knew the storm was not in control. His Father was. So if you want to never be angry or bothered by anyone, then give up the illusion that you must control them. You don't. You were never meant to. And in surrendering that illusion, you will find a freedom that cannot be shaken, a peace that cannot be stolen, and a life no longer ruled by anger, but ruled by love. Divine detachment is one of the most powerful spiritual postures a believer can walk in, yet it is one of the least understood. It is not indifference, it is not coldness, it is not apathy. It is a holy separation, a sacred stillness in the soul that allows you to live in the world but not be ruled by it. To walk in divine detachment is to walk in freedom, not from people, but from the emotional chains they often bring with them. It is to rise above the noise, the drama, the chaos, the opinions, the expectations, and even the betrayals, not by building walls, but by living from a higher place. You are not called to be dragged into every battle. You are not designed to carry every burden others try to lay on you. You were never meant to be entangled with every conflict, every word, every look, every insult. But the world teaches you to react. It teaches you to defend your name, protect your image, win the argument, prove your point. And every time you take that bait, you descend. You step out of the spirit and into the flesh. And the flesh has no peace. The flesh always demands a response. But divine detachment is the mark of a spirit that refuses to descend. Messiah walked in divine detachment. He moved among the crowds, but was never ruled by them. He was surrounded by need, yet never rushed. He was constantly misunderstood, yet never anxious to explain himself. He was falsely accused, yet offered no defense. He walked in love, but that love was never dependent on how people treated him. Why? Because his identity, his peace, his strength did not come from man, it came from the Father, and so he could walk through every storm, every betrayal, every confrontation without ever losing his stillness. That is divine detachment, not being untouched by pain, but being unmoved by offense. It is to care deeply while standing freely. It is to love without clinging, to serve without striving, to speak truth without fearing rejection. It is to live from the throne room, not from the courtroom of public opinion, and to get there you must let go. You must release the need to always respond, the compulsion to always fix, the desire to always be vindicated. The enemy thrives in emotional entanglement. He wants you constantly stirred, constantly triggered, constantly provoked, because if he can keep you reacting, he can keep you from resting, but your power is in your stillness. Scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness is not weakness. It is warfare. When you are still, the enemy cannot manipulate you. When you are detached from the world's pull, the world loses its power over you. People will say things, they will do things, they will act in ways that betray you, offend you, or confuse you. But when you walk in divine detachment, those things no longer have authority over your heart. You become like a tree planted by rivers of water, not tossed by every wind. You live not from reaction, but from revelation. You hear something offensive, but instead of rising up, you rise above. You see something unjust, and instead of exploding in rage, you bring it to the throne in intercession. You don't harden your heart, you anchor it. To walk in divine detachment is to be in the presence of people, but rooted in the presence of God. It's what allowed Messiah to kneel and wash the feet of the very one who would betray him, not because he didn't feel it, but because he was not ruled by it. He had detached from the need to be treated a certain way in order to walk in love. And so must you. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to correct every wrong idea, respond to every insult, or chase down every misunderstanding. The more you grow in the Spirit, the more silent you will become in the face of provocation, not because you are afraid, but because you are free. When you practice divine detachment, you give God space to move. You step back and let him fight your battles. You choose peace over pride. You trade the urgency of the flesh for the serenity of the Spirit. And in doing so, you become a vessel of his presence, a calm in the storm, a light in the chaos, a reflection of heaven in a world that only knows how to react. That is divine detachment, and that is how you walk through life unbothered, unshaken, and full of holy peace. The fourth key to never being angry or bothered by anyone is understanding the mirror of mercy. What does this mean? It means that the things people do that provoke you, frustrate you, offend you, or disturb your peace are often not about them. They are about you. They reveal something inside you that is still unhealed, still alive, still seeking justice, still clinging to pride or fear. People are mirrors, and the way we react to them reflects the state of our own hearts. And when you begin to see that clearly, everything changes. Anger, at its core, is a revealer. It shows you what you are still attached to, what you are still protecting, what you are still afraid to lose. If someone's disrespect shakes you, perhaps you are still clinging to your need for affirmation. If someone's betrayal devastates you, perhaps you are still depending too much on others for your sense of stability or identity. The moment you are deeply offended, something is being touched inside of you, not just in the moment, but from the past, from wounds, from pride, from unmet needs you haven't surrendered. The mirror of mercy shows you that most of what bothers you in others is a divine opportunity to examine yourself, not to condemn yourself, but to refine yourself. People who irritate you the most might be God's instruments, not because they are righteous, but because they are revealing what still needs to die in you, and that revelation is a mercy. It's an invitation to deeper freedom. We often pray, "Lord, make me more like you," and then we get angry when someone cuts us off in traffic, or when a friend forgets us, or when we are misunderstood. But those moments are the answer to your prayer. They are the fire that refines. They are the testing ground of love, humility, and patience. And they are the mirror that shows us where we still need him. Mercy is the key that unlocks this mirror. When you learn to extend mercy to others and to yourself, you begin to detach from the need to take things personally. You begin to see people not as enemies or irritants, but as broken, wounded vessels just like you. People are often not trying to hurt you. They are reacting from their own pain. They are projecting their own fears. They are walking through their own darkness. When you realize this, you stop fighting them and start praying for them. The mirror of mercy allows you to see what's happening behind the surface. You begin to ask, not why are they doing this to me, but Lord, what are you showing me in this? And in that question is a shift. A holy shift from reaction to revelation. You begin to live with greater awareness, greater softness, greater authority over your emotions, not because you've numbed them, but because you've submitted them. Yeshua looked at the people who mocked him, beat him, and crucified him, and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That is mercy, that is divine perspective. He saw beyond the offense. He looked into the brokenness that caused it. He didn't react, he redeemed. He didn't retaliate, he interceded, and he invites you to do the same. You may say, but they were wrong. Yes, they may have been. But does their wrongness justify your bondage? Does their sin deserve your peace? What if every offense was an opportunity to grow in mercy, to grow in maturity, to grow in the image of Messiah? When you look in the mirror and see that anger still lives in you, don't run from it. Bring it to the cross, lay it down, let it die. Let the mirror show you the truth, not to shame you, but to set you free. And when you see that same mirror in others, show mercy, forgive, bless, release. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. This is how you stop being bothered. You stop making everything about you. You let God use even the hardest people to shape you into the likeness of His Son. You choose mercy instead of bitterness, compassion instead of contempt, and over time that mirror becomes clear. You no longer see your pain in others. You begin to see His love. That is the mirror of mercy. And that is how you walk through life with a heart that is soft, unoffended, and completely free. The fifth key to never being angry or bothered by anyone is living from eternity. This world is loud, fast, demanding. It constantly tells you what matters: reputation, achievement, respect, revenge, being right, being seen. But all of it is dust, all of it is passing away, and the soul that learns to live from eternity no longer bows to the urgent noise of temporary things. When your heart is set on eternity, the offenses of this world lose their power. The slights, the betrayals, the misunderstandings, they become light and momentary because you are rooted in something far greater. Anger often comes when we feel our territory is being invaded, our name, our pride, our rights, our place. But the one who lives from eternity has already surrendered those things. You begin to see this life as a vapor, a shadow, a brief journey towards something infinitely more real. You are not living for this moment. You are living for forever, and when forever becomes your focus, now no longer controls you. Yeshua walked the earth with eternity in His eyes. He never clung to the moment, never grasped for worldly power, never fought to defend His image before men. Why? Because He came from the eternal, and He was returning to the eternal. He saw beyond the crowd's praise and the crowd's rejection. He knew how quickly both would fade. He looked at every situation through the lens of eternity, and because of that, He remained unmoved. The cross, the shame, the betrayal, all of it was endurable because He saw what was beyond it. For the joy set before Him, He endured the cross, scorning its shame. If you want to live unbothered, you must live beyond the moment. Beyond the sting of the insult, beyond the discomfort of the trial, beyond the fear of being misunderstood. You must ask yourself, in the light of eternity, does this really matter? Not in a dismissive way, but in a freeing way. Eternity shifts your perspective. It breaks the chains of urgency and ego and opens your eyes to the things that truly matter: souls, love, faithfulness, surrender, and the glory of God. The one who lives from eternity doesn't need to win the argument. Why? Because eternity reveals that being right is not as important as being righteous. The one who lives from eternity doesn't need revenge. Why? Because eternity says justice belongs to the Lord. The one who lives from eternity doesn't need applause. Why? Because they live for the well done of their Father, not the applause of men. That's where peace is born, in the soul that is anchored not in now, but in forever. This is why the saints of old could suffer joyfully, why the apostles could sing in prison, why Stephen could pray for his killers while being stoned to death, because they were not living from earth, they were living from heaven. They were not rooted in comfort, they were rooted in eternity. They saw something greater, something more real than pain, more lasting than offense, more weighty than anger. That's what Paul meant when he said, "Our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." Living from eternity doesn't mean you become detached from people. It means you love them more purely. When you stop expecting people to give you what only God can, you're free to love without condition. You stop needing people to treat you perfectly in order to walk in joy. You stop being tossed by every offense because your heart is fixed on something unshakable. Every moment of irritation is a test. Will you live from earth or from heaven? Will you react in the flesh or respond from eternity? Will you fight for your pride or yield for the sake of peace? When you live from eternity, you begin to value peace over pride, humility over being right, compassion over vindication. You become slow to anger, quick to forgive, rich in mercy. That's the freedom Messiah walked in. That's the freedom he offers you, to live above the moment, to be seated in heavenly places while walking through earthly troubles. To set your mind on things above, not on things below. And in that mindset, in that posture of eternity, you find that the things that used to provoke you no longer reach you. The anger fades. The irritation dissolves. The offense becomes an opportunity, and you walk on, unbothered, with your eyes on forever.